They erased Evelyn's name from the will on the day of her father's funeral. But no one could have imagined that inside that dusty old room, she would discover something that would force her wealthy family to bow before the truth. The empty chair at the lawyer's table, her name was Evelyn Hartman. At 48 years old, Evelyn had grown used to being treated as the unimportant child in the Hartman family. Her father, Charles Hartman, had once been a well-known businessman in Boston. He was cold, disciplined, and rarely showed affection. To outsiders, he was a symbol of success. To his family, he was the kind of man who made everyone walk carefully inside their own home. The reading of the will took place 3 days after the funeral. The lawyer's office was so quiet that Evelyn could hear the steady ticking of the clock on the wall. Her stepmother, Vivian, sat beside her 2 children, Marcus and Claire. They were dressed in black, yet their eyes gleamed with anticipation. Evelyn sat alone at the far end of the table. She was not expecting much. She only wanted to know that during the final days of his life, her father had still remembered her. Attorney Whitmore opened a brown file folder. His voice echoed evenly through the room. All major assets, including the Hartman residence, company shares, and the family investment fund, would be transferred to Vivian Hartman and her 2 children. The air seemed to freeze. Evelyn slowly lifted her head. Her name was never mentioned. Not a room, not a letter, not a single keepsake. Vivian let out a soft sigh, pretending to be sympathetic. Evelyn, your father probably had his reasons. Marcus lowered his head to hide a smile. Claire looked at Evelyn with the expression of someone who had already won. Evelyn did not cry. She did not argue. She simply asked one question. Did my father leave any message for me? The lawyer remained silent for a few seconds before shaking his head. No. That answer hurt more than losing the inheritance, because in that moment, Evelyn realized she had not only been erased from the will, she had been erased from her own family's memory. The old room and the locked box. That evening, Evelyn returned to the Hartman House. Vivian did not want her staying long. Her voice sounded gentle, but every word carried the sharpness of a blade. You can take a few of your personal belongings, but this house no longer belongs to you. Evelyn nodded. She walked up the old wooden staircase that had once held the memories of her silent childhood. Every step seemed to pull her back into the years of being forgotten. The dinners, when her father only asked Marcus about school. The mornings when Claire was taken shopping for new dresses, while Evelyn quietly repaired her old clothes herself. Her room was still at the end of the hallway. Dust covered the vanity table. The curtains had faded with age. A few books she had read in her youth still rested on the shelf. As she bent down to pick up a photo box beneath the bed, her hand brushed against a loose floorboard. She froze. More curious than hopeful, she lifted the board. Beneath it sat a small metal box secured with an old lock. Attached to the lid was a yellowed piece of paper. For Evelyn, when you are brave enough to know the truth. Her heart pounded. The handwriting belonged to her father. Evelyn sat down on the floor. Her hands trembled slightly. Using an old hairpin, she worked at the lock. After several attempts, the lid finally sprang open. Inside was an audio tape, a stack of bank documents, several unsent letters, and another copy of a will. This will contain her name. Not just her name, it left Evelyn the majority of the Hartman Company shares and full control of the family trust. She read it again and again, her breath catching in her throat. Then she noticed the date. It had been signed only 2 months before her father died. The version of the will that had been presented afterward was a fake. The tape on a rainy night, Evelyn brought the box back to her small apartment. Heavy rain poured outside. Boston glowed beneath cold city lights. She placed the tape into an old recorder she had hurriedly purchased from an antique shop. Static crackled first. Then her father's voice appeared, raspy, weak, yet unmistakably clear. Evelyn, if you are hearing this, it means I was unable to tell you these things myself. She covered her mouth with her hand. For many years, I allowed you to believe that you did not matter. That was the greatest mistake of my life. His voice paused, as though he was struggling to catch his breath. Vivian hid many things from me. She told me you did not want to see me. She told me you only cared about money. She told me you hated me. I believed her because I was too proud to ask you for the truth. Tears rolled down Evelyn's hands as she listened. Her father continued, "But a few months ago, I discovered everything. The letters you sent me never reached me. Your phone calls were blocked. The money that rightfully belonged to your mother had been redirected. I also discovered that Vivian and Marcus had pressured the accountant into altering the records of the family trust." Evelyn sat frozen. Her biological mother, Margaret, had died when Evelyn was only 16 years old. For years, she had believed that her mother had left behind nothing but a few pieces of jewelry. But the truth was right there in the documents. A private trust in Evelyn's name, assets her mother had left for her, an account that had been steadily drained for more than 20 years. Her father continued speaking. "I rewrote my will. I gave the original copy to a second attorney, but I feared they would find a way to destroy it. That is why I hid this copy where only you could find it." Then his voice grew softer. "You do not need to seek revenge through anger. You only need to bring the truth into the light." Evelyn remained motionless for a long time. The pain inside her was no longer a wound. It had become a fire. The Hartman family's final dinner. 2 days later, Vivian hosted a small dinner at the Hartman House. She planned to announce the sale of the estate, transfer control of the company to Marcus, and close the door on everything connected to Evelyn. Evelyn accepted the invitation. Vivian was surprised when she saw Evelyn walk in with an unusual sense of calm. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Did you come here to beg for your share?" Evelyn placed her purse on a chair. "No. I came to hear all of you speak one last time." Claire let out a quiet laugh. "Still enjoying the role of the victim, I see." Dinner began beneath a layer of forced politeness. Vivian raised her glass and spoke about family, gratitude, and Charles's legacy. Every word sounded beautiful, like fresh paint covering a rotting wall. Evelyn silently observed each of them. She watched Marcus confidently discuss the future of the company despite never having worked seriously a single day in his life. She listened as Claire talked about turning Evelyn's old bedroom into a walk-in closet. She saw Vivian smiling like a queen who had just seized a throne. Toward the end of the evening, Evelyn stood up. "I have one final gift from my father that I would like to share." The room fell silent. She placed the recorder on the table and pressed play. Charles's voice filled the room. "Vivian hid many things from me." The smile vanished from Vivian's face. Marcus jumped to his feet. "What is this?" Evelyn did not look at him. She allowed the tape to continue. "The letters you sent me never reached me. The money that rightfully belonged to your mother was taken away." Claire turned pale. Vivian trembled, yet she struggled to maintain her composure. "That is fake. Evelyn, you should be ashamed of yourself." Evelyn pulled out the documents. "There are bank signatures. There are transfer records. There is a notarized will, dated before the one all of you presented." Marcus lunged forward to grab the papers, but the dining room door suddenly opened. Attorney Whitmore stepped inside alongside an elderly woman. It was Helen, Charles's longtime secretary, a woman who had worked for him for more than 30 years. Helen looked at Vivian with disappointment in her eyes. "I kept the original copy at Mr. Charles's request. I have also turned over the entire file to the investigators." No one said a word. For the first time in her life, Vivian could not find a way to control the room. When the truth stepped into the light, in the weeks that followed, the Hartman family became the center of a major scandal. The company underwent an internal audit. Old transactions were re-examined. Marcus was removed from the board of directors after evidence revealed his involvement in concealing financial records. Claire, who had lived off the family trust for years, was forced to repay numerous unlawful expenses. Vivian left the Hartman estate on a gray and gloomy morning. There were no reporters praising her anymore, no wealthy friends surrounding her, no charity galas where she could present herself as a noble and admired woman. Evelyn did not stand outside the gate to watch her fall. She did not need that. Her true victory was not in witnessing someone else's downfall. Her victory was finally being able to stand tall within her own story. The authentic will was officially recognized. Evelyn became the controller of the family trust and the largest shareholder in the Hartman company. Yet the first thing she did was not buy a new house or throw a celebration. Instead, she reopened her mother's old room. Inside a drawer, Evelyn found a photograph of Margaret. Her mother stood in a garden, her hair dancing in the wind, her smile as gentle as the first sunlight of spring. On the back of the photograph was a handwritten message. "My daughter will never be small in this world." Evelyn pressed the photograph against her chest. This time, she cried, not because she was weak, but because, after more than 20 years of having her voice taken away, she had finally heard the love she once believed had disappeared forever. 1 year later, the Hartman House no longer felt cold and lifeless. Evelyn never sold it. She transformed part of the estate into a legal assistance foundation for women whose assets had been manipulated or stolen by family members. She named the foundation after her mother, Margaret House. Every room that had once hidden secrets now became a place where others could find the truth. One day, someone asked Evelyn whether she hated her father. She remained silent for a long moment before answering. "I used to hate him, but in the end, I realized that some people learn how to love far too late. That does not erase the damage, but it helps me stop carrying the pain as though it were a life sentence." This family drama story is not simply about a forged will. It is the story of a woman who was erased, dismissed, and pushed to the edge of her own family, yet still found her way back to the truth. And sometimes, the strongest thing a person can do is not scream to be heard. Sometimes it is staying silent long enough, holding on to the evidence firmly enough, and allowing the truth to walk into the room where every liar is sitting. If you have ever been overlooked by your family, treated unfairly, or wondered whether the truth would ever be seen, leave a comment below. Do you think Evelyn should forgive them? Or walk away forever? Subscribe to the channel so you never miss another family drama story filled with secrets, betrayal, justice, and endings powerful enough to leave your heart speechless.